Well, turning now to a follow-up on our big story from last night, Portland City Councilor Samir Kanal joined me live in the studio to talk about his upcoming proposals related to immigration enforcement in the Rose City. The first would make the city's sanctuary status part of city code, rather than just being a non-binding resolution, which is what was passed back in 2017. The new proposal would require the city administrator to create new policies like sanctuary city trainings, making sure city services are complying with the sanctuary city status, and create a job for an immigrant affairs liaison in each of the city's more than 24 bureaus. Now, that could be introduced to full council as early as next week. The other idea, which is not as far along, would prohibit all law enforcement, including federal agents, from intentionally concealing their identities during routine operations and require officers to display their badges. Currently, there is no policy in Portland that prohibits law enforcement from wearing face coverings. Now, in the wake of our coverage last night, we got a voicemail from a viewer named Dick with a question we've received several times related to the state of Oregon's sanctuary status that we wanted to address. Let's listen.
Has the state ever been given an opportunity to vote on whether this is a sanctuary state or not? I think that the public should have been given a vote on determining the status of our state.
The short answer is yes, but there's a bit of context that's needed, which is what the show does best. So let's jump in. Oregon's first in the nation sanctuary law was signed back in 1987 by then Governor Neil Goldschmidt. It passed the legislature in Salem almost unanimously. Only two lawmakers, one in the House, one in the Senate, voted against it. The law back then was in response to racial profiling of immigrants by law enforcement. So did Oregon citizens have a vote on whether or not to become a sanctuary state in the first place? Not necessarily. It was state lawmakers who are, of course, elected by citizens. But jump ahead to 2018, and that's when Oregonians truly got the choice of whether or not to remain a sanctuary state. And that was thanks to Measure 105. A ballot initiative filed by 3 Republicans in the Oregon House. It would have repealed Oregon's sanctuary law, allowing state and local agencies to play a role in federal immigration enforcement. If you think back to 2018, we were well into President Trump's first term in office, where immigration was still a central issue. So the national politics were certainly playing a role here as well. But here's how Measure 105 ended at the ballot box. Defeated, with more than 63% of the statewide vote, by a margin of nearly 500,000 voters, meaning Oregon would remain a sanctuary state. So, to answer Dick's question, yes, Oregonians did get to vote on whether or not to be a sanctuary state, just 7 years ago, in fact. And voters chose to keep things the way they had been since 1987, leaving immigration enforcement solely up to the federal government.